Today, and alhamdulillah, we have Brother Ali Keiser. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Keiser with us, a brother who will be sharing with us his very interesting account of his journey to Al-Islam and the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam as well. So, Ali, if we could start by you telling us your origins in terms of your ethnic background, where your parents are from, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm coming from Switzerland. My ethnic background, my father's Swiss. His family has been there for many, many hundreds of years, should I say, or as far as we know, as far back as we know. My mother's been from Netherlands, from Holland. So, yeah, European
Okay.
ethnical background. Yeah.
Okay, and in terms of your religious upbringing, I mean, were you brought up as an atheist, agnostic, Christian?
I was brought up, so to say, as a regular Christian, as you'd expect someone to be brought up, or as you see most people being brought up. You learn about certain things. You go to church once in a while. For example, you go for Christmas. You might do something for Easter. You do you get baptized. You do the communion, and you hear about religion in school, in religious class. You hear all the stories.
Sure.
About the prophets and the different characters.
Okay.
But that's as far as I was kind of in touch with
Sure.
with religion.
And just because you mentioned the personalities, obviously the prophets and so on and so forth, what was the style of the sermons that you would hear as a youngster? I mean, was it something that you were intrigued by, that you were interested by, or was it something like, for a lot of us growing up, wasn't really connecting with us, and maybe in some circumstances were even falling asleep? Which of those two categories did you fall into the few times you did go to church?
Going to church, it was more something, the religion was always something to me for myself. I went to church, but the connection was not too much to the church, but the connection to God was more there from myself. But I liked hearing the stories which were taught in religious class. When we, for example, had to draw a picture of one of the things and I remember drawing the picture of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was about to sacrifice his son. I remember that I had to draw that in a picture. I had kind of clearly have in front of me how I drew it. So I was someone, I liked the religious classes. I liked it a lot, so I was not falling asleep.
Okay, alhamdulillah, that's good. You're making me feel bad about my own self. And did you have any other siblings that you grew up with, or was it just your good self?
Yeah, well, my parents, mashallah.
And of course your parents, of course.
But I'm an only child.
Okay.
I'm an only child.
Okay. And how much of an influence, how much of a religious influence did your parents have on you? Because you said that you quite enjoyed hearing the biblical stories from, I guess, the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. Was this something that was encouraged by your parents, or is this just something you were doing on an individual basis?
I think it was encouraged by them, because they gave me the opportunity to do those, for example, the communion and the thing you do when you're a little bit older, and I think they were happy I did it, and because they are religious in a way, as most people are religious in some way, saying there is God, go to the church, for example, for Christmas, trying, have good moral values and so on. So, yeah, from that point, religion was there, but it was not like religion is now. Life became religion now. Religion was more a part to life.
Sure.
On different occasions, and of course they also encourage it by making sure you go to school, you learn, you do what you have to learn, and by encouraging you to go to those classes, to do the things that school would require, might be the wrong word, but suggest, or the church would suggest you to do.
Sure.
But in an open, not strict way, but in an open, more in a feel free to do it way, than in terms of you have to do it.
Okay. So it wasn't enforced, but
no.
maybe
encouraged to do
encouraged,
it. Encouraged to do it.
Implicitly encouraged. As a youngster, I mean, a lot of people that I speak to on this show seem to, well, not always, but for some, they can always re- they can always remember a particular incident in their past or a number of occasions in their past where they either communicated with Allah or God, or they had some dreams, or or just generally they would kneel down and make a quick prayer before going to bed. I mean, what was it like for you? I mean, you spoke about the drawings and enjoying the stories, but were you able to develop a one-on-one relationship with your maker?
I did, yes. I did from, let's say, around about 8-ish, 9-ish maybe. I started to pray like the way I knew it. Like I folded my hands and then, for example, before going to bed or when I was in bed, or I just pray for good health, for good tidings for my parents. Sometimes on the street when I saw someone I felt sorry for, or I thought that might be in need of something, or that might be in need of some compassion, I was like, oh, yes, dear God, please give him a happy life, a good family, make that he's well off, and so on. So the connection was there, I think, from quite an early age of being aware of things.
Sure. And did you ever, as again, some of us did as youngsters, did you ever, I don't know, pray for a new pair of shoes or something materialistic, like, I don't know, a big toy, or were you looking for more metaphysical rewards?
Good question. I think I was looking for the metaphysical, so to say, from quite an early age. I ask myself quite often why I'm here, what's the purpose. But I also prayed for material things like, for example, in school when you went to gym class, oh God, please let me score a goal. I haven't scored a goal in a long time. Things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. You said you're from a Catholic background, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Tell me what I mean, is it the crucifix sign? I don't know if I'm doing it correctly because I was from a Protestant background.
Yeah.
But did you used to do that?
I used to do that. Yes.
Okay.
For example, because I played ice hockey, for example, quite a long time of my life. I did that, for example, a lot of time, or for many years before I entered the ice. Every time I did this, yes. Of course, upon entering the church, I did it, yes.
And the significance is what? Is it like a declaration of your faith, or what?
It's good. It's a good way of saying it. It was a declaration of faith. It was not like, of course, I said Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but to me, it never was three things. Of course, you heard people talking about the Trinity. You heard people talking about the prophet Jesus being Son of God, and so on. Yeah, I said that kind of myself because we were taught to, but when I prayed, I was not praying to Jesus, to me it was always kind of the connection with the Creator Himself, and not with, and also the sign, doing the sign. It was, as you said, a symbol of faith, but not for the Trinity or something like that. No.
Sure. So you didn't see Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, to be who your prayers should be directed to?
No, when I entered the church, I bowed down before the cross, because the cross hangs in every church,
of
like
course.
right in front of you.
Miss it, yeah.
Exactly, but no, it was, as far as I remember, I never directed my praise towards him. To me, he was like, it was a prophet. He was the figure the religion was based on.
Sure.
But God was way beyond.
Interesting. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. You mentioned how you started of your own volition becoming quite religious, thinking of metaphysical matters at a very young age, pre-teen years even, which is arguably quite young, which obviously is a good thing. However, you would have sooner or later become a teenager, and there must have been social pressures, peer pressures around you that would have meant that you would have eventually done some things which now, obviously, as a Muslim, we would frown upon. whether that be, I don't know, drugs or alcohol or whatever, women. I mean, did these things affect you?
Not for a long time, unfortunately, or of course, however, from whichever point of view you want to see it in this society, at some point it did, but I would place the barrier there at around 18 to 20, that I kind of surrendered. Because until then I was dedicated to what I did. I was dedicated to sports, and when others went out in the evening, for example, I got the key to the arena from a friend. I went to do my workouts. I went to do workouts on Sundays, for example, and also when people went for a beer after games and so on, I was like, no, I didn't like it. I did not want to. Also, even though people say, yeah, come on, let's go out, you know, this, for example, women, that, alcohol, this, it was not something appealing to me for a really, really long time. But then, yeah, you're in that society, you're surrounded by it. It's a subject like so often, it's so in your face in the West. So at one time, it got to you. But mashallah, only for a short period of time and not too hard.
Alhamdulillah. So you were able to hold it off until the age of 18. Many of us would be very impressed with that period of time that you were able to resist the let's call it the temptations. But what was the underlying reason why you were able to hold back for so long? Was it because of the fact that you were conscious about sports, or was it because you had this religious conviction, or maybe was it just a combination of the two?
I think sports might have been the thing I could hold on to, but in the end, there's always been. I've read a lot of books. Like as soon as I finished one, I would start another one on spiritual matters. So in the end, it was spirituality, but let's say in the costume of sports.
Sure.
So to say, yeah.
Okay.
I will put it that way.
Sure. So I mean, again, these books that you were reading at this particular point in time in your life, what messages, what were you taking from these books? Because these books, I'm assuming, hadn't at this point had anything per se to do with Islam. They may have mentioned Islam in passing, but there were books on spirituality. So what were you taking from these books?
It was, in the end, it was about finding your inner self. I would say it was a lot about mental training, about focusing, but then there were also books that went beyond, that went more to the metaphysical side, how how everything works and so on and so on. So, and there was also books about prayer, how a prayer should come from the inside. So it was not really Christian books. It was more, of course, it was based on the Christian society, but it was more to the metaphysical, spiritual side, and more, let's say, maybe New Age, but not too New Age, not what you know from like religion, Christianity itself, but like taking it a little bit to a more spiritual side.
Sure. And did you? I was going to say fall into the trap, but that may be slightly unkind. But did you go along the path that a lot of Westerners tend to do when they're looking into spirituality, in terms of maybe looking into religion like Hinduism or Buddhism or Taoism?
Yeah. In the end, I have to say there always was the guideline of a divine religion underneath it. Even though I was looking for, I always continue my search, so to say. But I ended up reading a lot about Buddhism because of the warrior background they have with the samurai and everything. Because it related a lot to the sports again.
Sure.
But I ended up there. I also tried to meditate, or I even meditated, let's say, once a day, and tried to do more meditations than just once a day. So I ended up in the end there, but still, it was to me a divine thing in as far as I thought that the word Buddha, even though I knew it was a figure, but when I said, for example, doing something wrong, or God, Buddha, Allah, please forgive me, Buddha for me was just the word.
God,
East Asians,
Buddha, Allah, you said.
Exactly. Because I didn't know how to call him, right? Because I thought, okay, Muslims call him Allah. We in the West we call him God. In the East they call him Buddha.
Mm.
So it was always the thing beyond.
Sure.
But I did not find the path beyond what the books were telling me.
Sure. So you got 2 out of 3, right? Allah, God. Maybe
Yeah, exactly.
Buddha was
Yeah, exactly.
slightly contentious.
Exactly.
Although obviously, I'm sure you're aware that well, there are some theories that he was actually a prophet, and maybe his teachings have somehow been deviated later. That's one theory that I've come across in the past. Your very first encounter with Islam, again, you may have come across it in passing in the books you're reading, but I mean, did you ever come across anybody who spoke about Islam at all?
No, I actually didn't. One thing in the book that you're mentioning now, I read one of those books about this more spiritual side, was that one of those authors said that the Muslims say that the Christians are on the right path, but haven't taken the next step yet. And I always use that in a debate when I was talking to someone, when it was about religions. I kind of supported the Muslims in that way, and then, but I never got to encounter someone until 1.5 years back from now.
I mean, how does that play in terms of, you obviously must have been exposed to the media, and I can only assume that, not always of course, but the portrayal of Islam in Switzerland cannot be good, at least not all the time. The majority of the time it would be negative. So surely you must have had a negative image of Islam, no?
I would say yes and no. Of course, you read, unfortunately, what you read about, for example, what happened on 9/11. You built up your anger against those people, just simply because you don't know how to differentiate between the people who, for example, did those attacks and what Islam truly is. So yes, they're kind of. I was like, I was influenced by the negative image portrayed by the Western media. I would say so. Yes.
Okay. And how was it for you when you first encountered a Muslim for the first time? I mean, did you envisage that person as being a potential terrorist or a backward person or anything like this?
No, when I think like this, the first Muslim person I encountered consciously is my wife, whom I'm married to now. So, mashallah, yeah.
Okay.
She's a good person to be the first impression of Islam, yeah.
Sure. So, and obviously she gave you a positive impression.
Most definitely, yes.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. At the juncture at which you met your wife, what was your knowledge of Islam like? Did you know much or nothing at all?
I did not know too much at all. I just knew it was a religion, one of the 3 big religions, as we call it. To me, as I said earlier, it was like the religion of the Middle East, whereas Christianity is the religion of the West. So to say, there was not. I didn't know too much about it, but it was like all kind of in search of the same thing.
Sure.
So to say, yeah.
Sure. And so how did you go about, I mean, I'm assuming you maybe entered into debates or discussions with who was, she wasn't your wife at that particular point, but your future wife. Was this how you began to learn more, or how did it happen?
Exactly. It was just by her challenging my thought, because of the God, Buddha, Allah thing. The 3 things that she mentioned, but that one is not God, is a person, is a figure who has a nice philosophy and brought a nice philosophy to the East, a nice way of life, but he's not God. I think that thing that really challenged me in how you have to review my view of the world and review my view of religions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then also made me want to learn more about Islam.
Okay, so you began to learn more, what, from just discussions, or did you start reading yourself?
Discussion first, and then reading myself. Reading myself a German translation of the Quran, and not too many internet sites, only particular ones, because I've been told right from the beginning, watch out, there's a lot of deviations out there, so to say. She mentioned to me quite from the beginning on, look, this is what happened right at the start, after the death of our Prophet. And I was like, I found it strange that something like that could happen to such a precious or important individual and then his family. So that kind of got me to research into the right area, mashallah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It didn't put you off thinking that Muslims could behave in such a way to the Prophet and then subsequently the Prophet's family? Some people may have thought, well, I don't really want to get involved with people like this.
Well, maybe it's because of my inner nature, because I was always looking for like a true meaning to life. I liked movies with heroes in it, like people who fought for something, be it like William Wallace in Scotland, or being like you might have heard about William Tell, the Swiss national hero who shot the apple with the crossbow of his son's head because he would not bow down to the hat of a ruler of that time. So I was always attached to that. So when I heard the story of Islam and what happened then to a small minority by a big majority, I could relate to it really, really quickly.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So you began to research a lot more, reading selective websites, and now that you was becoming more cognizant of what Islam entailed, how did it sit with you? Because obviously you had done a lot of research previously on, as you said, books on spirituality, so you were in a relatively comfortable place. Now you're suddenly reading a totally new ideology. I mean, wasn't it foreign to a lot of the stuff maybe that you'd already read?
Actually, a lot of the things I read was what I was looking for before, but did not know where to look for. For example, the thing of not drinking alcohol, because it just did not appeal to me. Or the thing the distance between men and women, as long as you're not married. I never liked, for example, to be touched too much, even when I was a Christian, also growing up as a teenager, or when even in family, when people will come up to you and kiss you and things like that. I was like, it just did not appeal to me, and also the views I had to life, the respect for my parents, because a lot of times in these societies here, like dissing of the parents, for example.
Sure.
When someone did that to my parents, I was like, watch your mouth or you're going to be in trouble. Because you're talking about my parents here, and be clear on that. You're talking about the people who brought me up and who tried their best to give me, what I need as a child and as a young adult in the end.
Sure.
So those values have always kind of been there. And when I read what Islam stood for, the connection was there straight away, kind of.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're due to go to a break now.
Mm-hmm.
When we come back, we can talk a bit more about your life after, or as you decided to revert to Islam, and then
Inshallah.
afterwards. And I'm quite interested to know what life is like for a revert Muslim, follower of the Ahlul Bayt in Switzerland as well.
Inshallah.
So I look forward to that. Make sure you join us when we come back after this short break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Revert's World on Ahlul Bayt TV with myself, Abdurrahman Shukoya, and our guest today, Ali Keiser, a brother from Switzerland who is sharing with us his journey to Al-Islam and the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. Prior to the break, Brother Ali, you mentioned how you came across a Quran in German.
Yes, exactly.
And you started to read it, but I also know that you said that you came across some CDs in German as well.
Exactly.
I want to know what your experience was like when you first encountered either the reading or the audio of the Quran for the first time, because obviously you had prior knowledge of these prophets, these personalities, these divine personalities sent by God, glorified and exalted. And now you're able to access them, but from if you like, a different mindset, a different ideology, but recognizes all of these none the same. I mean, how was it for you when you came across the Quran and just generally the Quran, but also these personalities that you had information about prior to reading the Quran?
Hmm. It was, as you said, a translation of the Quran in German, and a CD, an audio CD, where someone just spoke the translation of the Quran in
Sure.
German. And I listened to that one first because it was for sports a lot on the road, also in the plane, and I just had it on my how do you say, my MP3 player, and just listened to it, and even before or when I slept, I left it on, and suddenly I realized, wow, I slept for a long time because so many surahs must have passed. And I woke up wet from sweating. I had strange dreams. I don't remember what. I just know I woke up like someone would have shook me for really quite some time, and really hard. So everything was like up and down, and so that was the first experience from hearing the translation of Allah's word. And then when I got some more time, less traveling, I picked up this translation and started reading it from the back with I was recommended just start with the short surah so you don't get tangled up with the long one.
Sure.
You just, bits and pieces
Sure.
in the beginning, and that felt so powerful. So every time I would read it, I had goosebumps all over my body. It was an undescribable feeling, which kind of gave me even more certainty, like, okay, this, there's just stick to it, or go into more, research more upon it.
About this religion.
Yes, or well, it was kind of clear to me from after the first couple of days that yes, that's it. I just did not have the time then, because, as I mentioned, it was in pre-season training and traveling a lot.
Sure.
To do what was required to do. But I said from almost day one, okay, that's going to be my religion, inshallah. But I have to do what I have to do, because I gave my word to do it, and I wanted to do it and stay in sports and prepare and so on. But as soon as I had more time, I embraced the religion based on those encounters.
Alhamdulillah.
Just mentioned.
And when did this take place roughly?
It was Ramzan 1 year back, so it was in September and August 2009.
2009,
yes,
so
1.5 years.
nearly 1.5.
Yes.
Well, yeah, 1.5 years ago now.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah, congratulations.
Mm.
What about your parents? Did you tell them?
I told them, yes. I did not tell them right from the beginning, but they kind of tasted something already.
Really?
Yeah.
What, they saw you praying or something?
No, I prayed at their home after I told them. So
Okay.
I asked them if it was okay. Of course, to them it's new. It's something you have to adapt to, because of course there's differences, or there's some things you don't do anymore, things you try to stay away from.
Sure.
But I was absolutely no problem to it. They were welcoming to it. They're asking questions about it, even present you with articles in the newspaper.
Really?
And asking about, saying, but they write this and this and that, and then you have to say, yeah, well, look, don't believe too much what they write, because they might be against it. But all in all, they were okay with it and supportive in a way. Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah, yeah.
And how has it been since it's been 18 months, as we said? How's it been? Because I'm assuming when you reverted, most of that time has now been spent back in Switzerland as opposed to Canada.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's it like being a revert Muslim in Switzerland?
My experiences, mashallah, so far have been good. Of course, you yourself have to change a lot. You have to get rid of a lot of customs and adapt new customs, as much as, for example, clean, what's purity, how to lead a clean life, and so on. But overall in Switzerland, it's for what I've encountered, it's been good. For example, my employers, whom I've worked for in the past 2 years, they allow me to do my prayers. For example, I work in a separate room. They're interested in why and how, and let's sit down and talk about it when we have a meeting kind of to see where we're at work-wise. We spent a lot of time on speaking about religion because one of my employers, actually both of them, my bosses, they are pretty religious Christians.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time in discussion actually.
Right.
So from that point of view, for myself, it's been really, mashallah, easy.
It's forgive my naivety. It's just, I don't know. Maybe because you're Switzerland, but I know you're not a million miles away from a place like Denmark, for example, where I know even somewhere like Holland, where you mentioned that your mother
Yes.
was from originally, where there seems to be a lot more hostility towards Islam. I mean, has this hostility not affected Switzerland?
One big thing that was on about 1 year back was the Minaret initiative. I think that went around the globe almost.
That's right, yeah.
Where the vote was, should Muslims be allowed to build minarets or not? And apparently the vote was no. Even though a lot of people regret this. Also the religious council, for example, of Switzerland, where the Jews, the Christians and the Muslims are represented all by three persons, they regretted. And they feel sorry for not being active enough to enter the debate and saying what should have been said to allow it. Hostility, there's always people hostile in the end. I don't think it's too hostile, but it's also not too pro. It is a small country, a small country, Christian country, quite some Muslims, but people just don't know too much about it. So you hear the odd commentary about something when you listen, or when you read, and when people comment on about what they read in newspapers. So yeah, not too hostile, but also not. There needs a lot to be done to display a good picture of Islam and what it really stands for, as opposed to what those paintings that people in Denmark did.
Sure.
Or the hostility in the Netherlands.
Sure. Alhamdulillah, you have a beautiful command of the English language, but I know that German's your first language.
Exactly, yes.
So my assumption would be that if you had a choice between reading something in German or English, you would probably choose German.
Exactly, yes.
Therefore, my next question is in terms of material, not just for yourself, but just in terms of, further propagation in Switzerland. How much material do you have in the German language, especially about the teachers of the Ahlul Bayt?
Yeah. Well, we bring our books, a lot of books from London, because mashallah, there's a lot of books here. In Switzerland, there's a big in Germany, there's a big center in Hamburg.
Okay.
That has quite a good online library where you can order books with really good books, also translation of some, for example, for Ali Shariati or Grand Ayatollah Motahari. So also really deep works.
Translated into German.
Translated into German, exactly. So there's good material out there, but of course it's not even close to what you have in English.
Sure.
It's not even close.
Sure. So I guess the majority of your reading is in English then?
Well, now that I know that there's the big center in Hamburg, we order quite some books from there, but still we bring books home from London every time we visit family here, because you just have much more.
Sure.
Much more here.
Sure. Obviously, that's an area that needs to be looked at. What about whereabouts do you live in Switzerland?
In Zurich.
In Zurich.
Zurich, biggest city for them.
Sure. And do you have centres nearby? Islamic centres nearby?
When you go online, we try to find something for Muharram 1 year back. When you go online, you find the Sunni mosques. And there are quite a lot of them. In the city area of Zurich, there are quite a lot of Sunni mosques. But when you go online to find a Shia mosque, it's really difficult. For example, if you look online, the first thing about is the opinion of the Wahhabis on the Shia, which is not aggressive, it's sort of politically correct. And the second thing is on a chat forum, is there a Shia mosque in Switzerland? And there's no reply to it. So that kind of shows you the exposure is not too big. But then on further research, we found a really beautifully done Lebanese mosque just on the border of Zurich. and on top of that, an Iranian mosque.
Wow.
And then going from there, I got to know there's one in Bern, there's one in Geneva, there's one in Lucerne. But you have to research more,
Sure.
or you have to know it
Sure.
to find those places.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it sounds quite difficult, but to be honest, in some ways it's a lot easier than it was back in the day, because, you know, when I first became a Muslim, there was no internet. So if you didn't know who to speak to, I mean, of course, in a place like London, it wasn't so much of an issue, but there are many people around the UK and other parts of the world who, you know, just through luck or just by going into a bookshop and meeting with another brother were able to find something. Now, you mentioned this particular building. You said there was a Lebanese center, and above it an Iranian center.
Exactly.
And this is in Zurich,
Yeah,
right?
right on the border, right
Sure,
outside.
sure. How does that work for somebody like you? I mean, I'm assuming, based on what we see in different parts of the world, that the Lebanese center will have their programs in Arabic, possibly,
Mm-hmm.
and the Iranian center will have theirs in Persian.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming, since it's only been a year and a half, that you haven't quite grasped the command of the Arabic or the Persian language. So, what do you do? Do you do what we used to do and just go and sit and don't necessarily understand what's going on?
What we do is we listen to lectures online from London
Okay.
a lot, because we're both, mashallah, quite solid in the English language, and because you have a really, really good speakers here, mashallah. But also we try to go there as much as we can, but the programs there are very, very limited, because Islam is not so big. Also the funding is more difficult there. There's for example, there's no resident alim there. What they do is dua kumail on Thursdays, then they pray in the congregation, and then the Friday prayers. There might be something on Tuesday in summers, might be not, but for example, there's no one who speaks on a regular basis, and also it's more like the prayer starts when there's enough people,
Sure.
which kind of shows you there's not too many people. Also, sometimes the connection is not there, that the Iranians, for example, they did their prayers, they have someone who leads the prayer, and my brother-in-law and I, we were in the Lebanese mosque, we wanted to do a Jamaat, and there was no one there, so we prayed on our own, and then we found out that 20 minutes later, upstairs, someone was leading the prayer. So there's, a little bit of work that needs to be done.
Sure, sure. And in terms of reverts, Brother Ali, are there many other Alis out there in Switzerland?
I've encountered some, but they're all native Muslims.
Right.
There's one brother who's retired now already, who was a Sunni for 17 years, and now he's joined our school of thought for the last 5 years, I think. But he's the only revert I've encountered so far.
Really?
Yes.
How do born Muslims in Switzerland, how do they treat you?
It's the first times I went there, I just got in contact with the one who opened the mosque, because I was there before they opened it. So I had a talk with him and a connection to him straight away. With the other ones, I got in contact, let's say, after the second, maybe third time. Some approached me, the others I approached them by entering and saying Assalamu alaikum to everybody.
Sure.
So they would see, okay, he's really one of us. He's not just some European who lost his way and wants to see what's in here. So, but because of maybe also the language barrier, it is more difficult. But when they see you coming on a regular basis, and they see you speaking to some brothers who they know, they come up to you and want to know, and they're going to want to share and want to know what you're about and so on.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Alhamdulillah. And the plans that you said there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Exactly, yes.
What plans do you have in mind to help to boost the situation there?
What kind of is unfortunate for us is that when you look at the media and who's in the media speaking for Islam, it's either a strong Wahhabi mosque in Switzerland, who's, let's say, those representatives who are all reverts as well, by the way.
Really?
Yes, studying Islamic sciences. I went into that class as well, just to see what Islam is portrayed like at university. And unfortunately, it's very much a science, like biology is to a biologist. And the Shia are wrong anyways. But then the seventh lecture, for example, started with a picture of the shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam. So which kind of shows you the Shia are wrong, but then in the end, one lecture is all about Mamun and Imam Rida alayhi salam. So there's a lot of people don't know about the truth, so to say, and base their opinion upon what Islam critics write, what the other Islamic sects have to say, and there's no one of our school to represent them. And as I said, if you go online, we are not represented. We're not represented by a Swiss community who make sure all the Shias are united, who make sure if someone, for example, goes to travel to Switzerland, finds his mosque right away in his area or his group right away, so he can go on a Friday or on a Thursday evening or whatever. So in terms of that, there's a lot of work to be done, also to make sure that the Muslims who are there kind of open up themselves and, you know, try to cross the barrier of the language,
Sure.
well, which of course is a barrier because there's a lot of people who immigrated because of the war, for example, in Afghanistan and in Lebanon, which makes it difficult to, you know, to find their way into society.
Okay.
Yes.
So you want to try and help them speak German, or bring them together under one umbrella?
Inshallah, we'll try to bring them together under one umbrella first. Try to make sure everyone knows who is where and where's the centers and everything, which was difficult. I was really kind of came home 2 or 3 times, like head down, like, oh no, the people are not so pro for it, saying yes, we have to, but you know, we lack the people, we lack the motivation, because they're all doing their wajibat and they're doing their du'as there, but as I said, the exposure is not there. And
Sure.
I think it's important for our school as well, that people know what we say, what the true root of Islam is, so it doesn't get bashed all the time in the media.
Sure.
But now, mashallah, there's another brother who called me 1.5 weeks ago, who's been trying to tackle this issue for a long time as well. So we've decided now to give
Sure.
it another attempt. And mashallah, got the chance to speak to two Molanas here whilst in London about this issue, who've been very supportive to it and offered their help as well. And we try to, maybe anybody hears about this now in the German-speaking area who could be of help, be of support, any kind of support, people with experience, we're more than welcome to help to strengthen the point of the Shia in Switzerland.
Inshallah. Hopefully, inshallah, when the funds are available, we'd love to come to Switzerland and maybe do a
Inshallah.
documentary over there, and
Inshallah.
you can
Most
show
welcome.
us around, and we can meet some of the brothers, and that will help, of course, to bring it home for our viewers as well.
Inshallah.
But as I was mentioning to you off air, make sure you start watching Ahl Bayt TV as well, just so that you have some sort of connection. Although, alhamdulillah, by the sounds of things, you do have a small community there. And just finally, how is the situation between, say, you and the Sunni brothers and sisters in Switzerland? I know there are a lot more. There are, in terms of number, obviously,
Yes.
there's a lot more of them. But, I mean, do you ever go to pray with them? And if you do, is it good, bad? How do they treat you? Are they welcoming?
I've been working with a Sunni in my previous office, and we had some interesting discussions. It was respectful. We have a private friend who's a Sunni as well, and we talk, we go about the differences and so on, which is on a respectful basis. I first encountered actually when I went to our center, because as I mentioned, there's 2 centers on top of each other. On the ground floor, there's a Sunni mosque, and from the internet I just saw the address, so I just entered the first door I found, and I was for a Jummah prayer, and then everybody just came in and prayed on the floor. There was no stones there, and so I was kind of confused. So that was my first encounter with a Muslim center in Switzerland.
Sure.
Which was kind of funny.
Yeah. Oh, you've not been back since?
No, I always went
Oh,
upstairs.
of course, yeah, in the same building.
Always
That's
went
right.
upstairs.
That's right.
But for me, there's not much too much interaction. I don't see too much interaction between
Sure.
those centers. I realize there's some brothers from downstairs coming upstairs just because they missed the entrance. And then our brothers say, oh, you're most welcome, it's your mosque as well.
Sure.
And then they say, yeah, but it's not the Bosnian mosque, is it? No, it's not. Oh, yeah. So we go downstairs for the language.
Right. Okay.
That's
Okay.
kind of
So
the encounters
basically,
I had.
so it's on ethnic. Of course, it will be
As well, yes.
according to schools of thought, but so it's pretty much predominantly a Bosnian center.
Yes.
Bosnian, Lebanese, Iranian. That's quite an interesting mix.
With a lot of Afghani people, also Pakistani, some other
Okay.
strong Afghani
What,
bases there.
in on all three floors, or
No, the Afghani people are strong with the Iranians.
okay,
because
of
of
course,
the
of course,
language.
Persian, yeah,
Yes.
of course, and they obviously follow the Ahlul Bayt. These.
They actually have to mention them because they actually did a julus at the night before Ashura this year, downtown Zurich, escorted by 4 or 5 police cars
Okay.
in rush hour over the Bahnhofstrasse, which is one of the most expensive shopping streets in the world.
Wow.
And the police actually, mashallah, shut this down.
How many people were there?
Roughly 150
Okay.
to 200, something like this.